Hi, Scott. How are you doing?
Very well, thank you, Simon. How are you?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. I'm good. Yeah, thanks very much for joining us today.
Pleasure.
Excited to have you on.
Thanks for
And
inviting me.
yeah, no problem. No problem. As I said, it's an absolute pleasure to have you on and, share some of that lovely knowledge that you've got in the space. But hey, I mean, just in terms of the series of episodes, I think it would probably be important to kind of give a quick introduction, both in terms of context and also, what and why we're doing it. My name's Simon Gregory. I'm one of the directors at Primis Talent. I focus on software and go-to-market hiring. Have done for the last nearly 15 years. And really, when I sort of thought back on the last few years, 5 or 6 years in particular, and when I've been doing sort of more senior hiring, I've met some amazing people in that time and heard like firsthand all about, the challenges and the really interesting stuff that they're building in the space. And it just kind of dawned on me that, these conversations that I'm having sort of, start and finish within a Zoom or Teams link, unfortunately. And some of the stories are absolutely awesome and people can learn from those, and even if one person learns, then that's sort of giving or paying it forward. So what I wanted to do is, create a series of episodes. This first sort of series is called Cracking the EMEA Revenue Code. What I really kind of thought up of doing is inviting some of the real kind of top revenue leaders, obviously yourself included, Scott, onto the show to share a little bit about some of the topics, some of the pieces that they've experienced within their careers and some of the stories they can draw back to. Really just to kind of give a platform and obviously share it far and wide, which I think is great. So we're going to invite sort of 5 to 10 revenue leaders. This is episode 2. We had Phil Draper on last week, who was running for 10 years Digital. You're smiling because you probably know him. Yeah, he's a great guy. So we spoke all about similar but not the same topics. Every company, every stage, every product has its own unique set of challenges. So, given Scott's background, I'll let him do a proper intro, but just as a headline, at places like Adobe, when they were really, really scaling, Treasure Data, where we met, and also Attentive, I thought he would have fantastic optics and, be able to bring loads of value into this type of conversation. So
I'll do my best.
no pressure. But with that in mind, I guess let's get cracking. No pun intended. So Scott, for those, I know I've given you a very quick intro, but for those that don't know you or haven't heard of you yet, can you share a little bit more about your story and career to date?
Yeah, sure. So I'm Scott Boocock. I'm a VP sales at EMEA. Been an enterprise sales or been a leader in sales for 25 years. You could probably tell from my accent, I'm not from the South. So I'm a northerner, an outspoken Yorkshireman, but I moved to London 25 years ago to start my career. So I'm married. I've got 11-year-old twins, and I live in a waterville in Essex, which is flowing fast this morning because it's chucking with rain.
Yeah.
In terms of career today, I've been really lucky. I've worked across a real mix of startups, including my own. I've worked in scale-ups and I've worked in enterprise. You mentioned Adobe and Treasure Data in the intro. I've also worked agency side as well for Digitas. Haven't experienced the full gamut. Haven't worked as a buyer or as a customer, but I've had a really good handle on the challenges that those businesses face at the different stages of their growth. And at the end of the day, I'm a seller first and foremost. I enjoy selling. I lead from the front with my teams. I'm very much a player coach. And you can't beat winning a big deal. It's a great feeling.
Got it in the blood. Got it in the blood. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. No, that's great. That's great. Okay. And in terms of key milestones, I always ask guests this just as a little intro, but have you got any like major key milestones in your personal career? And if
Yeah.
so, can you talk to those and why?
There's so many, really, good and bad.
Yeah. Safe
Right.
space.
Yeah. Same space the rest of the world.
There's no panic word.
There's so many, really. Look, there's so many. One of the best experiences I had was setting up my own business with a couple of business partners. It was really tough. It was in the dot-com boom. We did great things. We grew the business really, really quickly. We went from a scruffy little office to we had a lift in a building in Victoria. We had multiple floors. Sales and marketing, my team were on the top floor, operations in the middle, and we kept the engineers downstairs in the basement.
Wow, cliche.
Yeah, very much so. Yeah, we worked really hard there. We won some crazy big deals. I mean, the US Army were one of them. It was a crazy time. And we sold the business to one of our customers who bought all the technology, not enough to retire on, but wow, what an experience.
Yeah, yeah, I bet.
and I'm still in contact with the co-founders, and we still wax lyrical about that. The other kind of milestones are, and I want to talk to later on, I guess, about Big Mouth Media, and the time that I spent there was with that company, the longest period I've been with any company. Fabulous experience, great culture. We're just organizing our whatever year it is now reunion. We meet every year as a team, still very close, still in contact with everybody. That was a great time. And I guess the other one that from a personal point of view was I personally worked on and sold the largest ad cloud deal in Adobe's history in Europe at the time. It was a huge deal, multi-million TCV deal with a very large bank. Very tough process. I had to educate them. It's very much an educational sell. Took me 18 months, but it got me to President's Club, and I met Shantanu, the president of Adobe, and had a week with him and the rest of the C-suite. And that was awesome, fantastic opportunity, and that's probably the biggest deal I've ever done. And that was, win or lose that one, it was on the edge. My boss took me out for a bottle of champagne that was Churchill's favorite champagne. That was my prize for
Really? That's
that
cool.
deal. So yeah, and there's been many others, and there's been some failures as well, some misfires. But that's I view your career and life. It's like one big course, isn't it? You're on a one large course. You're learning every day. I think the moment you stop learning is the moment that you're going to fail. So you've got to be open. I've learned from my mistakes, hopefully, and haven't repeated some of them, maybe.
Yeah. That's cool. What do they say? It's the journey, not the destination, don't they? That's
Absolutely.
Okay. Well, let's jump into the actual content for the episode. So, in terms of if we talk about sort of market and strategy first, we've got a few questions on that. What do you see as the biggest untapped opportunity for growth in EMEA right now?
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple opportunities there. There's opportunities in markets that are emerging. There are small to medium-sized customers that I think, even as an enterprise company, you should consider looking at because they want enterprise-grade technology. I think the biggest challenge I've encountered across Europe is data and its use of. I think, like many, underestimated the potential impact of GDPR, and I think it's been huge. I've done a lot of work in Germany, and it's incredibly difficult to do anything with data in Germany. They're very literal, as you can imagine, about the interpretation of the laws, and it means that there are lots of companies in Europe that have a huge amount of first-party data that they are not activating, and they should be activating. When they do, it's by purchasing a CDP, like Treasure Data. Other CDPs are available, but they'll buy one of those. They'll then buy, a MarTech platform that will then plug into that CDP, and they will try and control the data usage there. And then they have to buy something for their advertising. So they'll buy an ad tech platform, or they'll feed out to an agency. And it's very, very disjointed. And I think, companies, the word I keep hearing is intelligent pipeline. So I think the companies that can solve for that in Europe, and particularly in markets like Germany and Scandinavia, where data privacy, data usage, data security is top of mind, they're going to win. And I think if you add AI into the mix as well, I think I read yesterday only about 11% of European companies are doing anything meaningful with AI. It's clearly huge. The companies that I've worked for are doing amazing things with AI. Exponential growth is being seen for those customers that are using it. So it's a bit of a long answer, but I think technology that can unlock that data and use it and give the companies the confidence to do that. Whilst using AI, I think that's the big win in the near future.
That whole first party data conversation is really interesting. I mean, as being on the front lines like you've been selling tools that leverage first party data, you must see firsthand how few are actually doing it in a brilliant way. Is that fair to say?
It is. I tell you what's really interesting is the companies that are doing it really well are flying, and they're really first mover advantage. It was that old book years ago, Crossing the Chasm, I think. Those early adopters of really good CDP technology like Amperity or Treasure Data, that are able to make sense of the data they've got, put it into silos, can't use, will use, use for this, use for that, etc., and be able to unlock its potential are doing really well. But most companies are running around in circles, and I think the challenge is, and where I've been successful, my teams have been successful, is acting as a consultant to make sense of the rules and to encourage companies to do more with their data. They get tied up in Where's my data going to be stored? Who's going to have access to it? I remember one customer in particular when I was at Treasure Data. I won't name them, that they're a very large French car manufacturer. It was a huge potential deal for us, and it was, a huge potential opportunity for them. And we got bogged down for months in a US engineer access our data. Well, yes, they can. That cannot happen. So we'd have to then ring fence and build their own instance and then put it in France and store their data in France. And so there's loads of inherent problems there. And the moment you make it a separate instance, it doesn't benefit from upgrades to the core system. It becomes a nightmare for us to manage. In the end, the lawyers decided that it was a no-go. So you had half the business could see the value and were desperate to get this over the line. And we had medpick to death, the whole opportunity. And we had champions that were just chomping at the bit to get going. But you had, IT, data compliance, legal teams, procurement, just were not comfortable with the minutest of detail. And I feel that that's just slowing everybody down. It's slowing progress, and we'll get there eventually. But I think salespeople that are able to act as a consultant and to help them make sense of it and to encourage them to go ahead and unlock their data, I think is where the win is.
Okay. What lessons have you learned about adapting a global playbook to succeed in EMEA?
This is my big bugbear, Simon. It drives me mad. US software companies that have fantastic playbooks, tried and tested, go-to-market strategy, and the view is one size fits all. It's going to work in EMEA, and it's just palm face time. I've spent so much time debating this with C-suites in US companies that I work for. It's the little things and it's the big things. For me, the little things are you don't have to localize your content into every language in Europe, right? English is sufficient, but it's removing the Zs, right? The little things. It's making it look like this content was written for us and not for the US market. It's price points. You can have technology or message send costs, etc. could be very, very low in the US. And therefore, the go-to-market strategy in the playbook is designed around that this is a low cost, high reward, but you translate that across to Italy or Poland or Germany, for example, where costs are very much higher than they are in the States. That doesn't work. So you need to redesign that playbook. And I guess what I've learned is you've got to have a core strategy which everybody signs up to, but you have to give your local AEs and your local partners the leeway and the opportunity to bring their experience to bear and to say, I think that if we just change this, reword that, use this content rather than this content, then that would work really well. And the old adage, of trial and error, try it. You can track everything, of course, now. So if you've got a good data capture and analysis tools, you can try iterations of it and prove, look, this works, that doesn't. So it is a challenge. You've also got to consider legality as well. GDPR being one example. Contractual and procurement processes are different from country to country, and you just have to adapt to that. And I think the easiest way to do it is learn from your teams that you hire locally, but also the partners that you build up who are used to selling in that region.
Yeah. Speaking to your peers, a lot of them talk about that. Try stuff and fail fast, isn't it? Because they beat with all the best data and playbook, and there's stuff completely out of control, right? And the product may or may not succeed. At that particular moment. No, that's interesting. I think I know the answer to this because you've mentioned it a few times. But which markets in EMEA are the toughest to crack and why? And you're not allowed to say Germany.
That's
God,
a
you're going to say
given.
Germany.
That one's a given. I honestly, Simon, I've got more grey hair and more sleepless nights over Germany than any other market.
Really? Yeah, I can imagine.
We could talk for hours about Germany, but a lot. I've learned a lot through that process of what to do and what not to do. Germany's definitely tough. I think the thing about Germany is they're risk averse. It's buying by committee. You have to win everybody's hearts and minds. It's not like the UK where you can have 2/3, 3/4 of the buying team are on side and you've got a few detractors, but you still win the deal. Doesn't happen in Germany. If everyone's not signed up, you're not getting the deal. Legal and compliance is so important. You have to get ahead of that and get them involved at the beginning of the sales cycle. Ram home to my AEs all the time. Get hold of a contact in the procurement team, the legal team, and start the conversations at the same time that you start the selling process. You must get them on board. And in Germany, more important than anywhere else. And I think good partner coverage as well in Germany. Germans like to buy from Germans. I learned that, the difference between, I don't know, Hamburg, Berliners and Munich, they're all different. They don't like to buy from each other. So it's a very complicated market, but it's a huge market and very lucrative.
Yeah, yeah. That's what I was going to say. Is it sort of cut across? I was going to say, but the opportunity, if you unlock some of that, and obviously because of the high barriers to entry, I'm probably saying stuff everybody's already knows, but
Yeah,
and because the complexity of it, the competitive landscape is scarce.
yeah,
You know,
exactly.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you do well, the opportunity is enormous, and
Mm.
it's worth it. It's worth the effort. But I went in too hard. I think localized everything into German. Had German speaking but not German located AEs.
Yeah.
It doesn't work. You need strong partners. You need local reps, and you need to listen to them and go with their guidance around, obviously, the framework of you go to market strategy for Europe anyway. I think the other interesting markets for me are the ones that I have experience with is Scandinavia is very similar to Germany in certain respects. It's quite conservative. There are some big brands up there, but there aren't many of them, and the population of those countries is quite low. So if you're selling a product or service that relies on consumption, then you've got to balance effort versus return from those markets. But always fun to sell there. I think France as well is an interesting market. Done really well in France, and we could probably touch on that later with experiences down there. But the French market is very different. It's all about relationships. It's all about French AEs and building really strong relationships over time, and not so process orientated. That's the thing I learned about France, and I've had some great experiences with French AEs. They like to take their time, and they like to be a little bit more maverick than the German A's, for example. And if you cut them some slack, which I did with one individual as a kind of test, then it pays dividends. I think those are the main ones. The other one I have less experience with, but have some experience is the kind of Dubai's, the Middle East. Again, totally relationship driven. You must have partners down there. I looked at putting one of the reps from Adobe into Dubai, and just the setup costs of relocating her, paying for nursery healthcare, accommodation. It's a big investment. And I think if I did that again, I would go partner first, and I would build and establish a beachhead. And then I would think about putting my own stuff in that region.
When do you decide to double down on a market versus when to pull back?
Yeah, that's a really good one. I mean, you can tell really quickly if you're getting solid pipeline, you're building that top of the funnel quickly, and you're getting conversions, you're getting conversion rates. So you've got maybe one decent flagship customer that's looking like you're going to be able to build a decent case study around. Then I think you double down on that market because you're doing something right. You're still testing and learning all the time, but I think that's when you know that you're onto something. I think when you pull back, what I have done is when you get a sense that this isn't working. We're not building pipeline anywhere near the rate we are in other markets. The offering is not resonating, or the way that we're presenting the offering is not resonating. We are not understanding the complexities of this market. We're being told, as happens in Germany, what are the German customers you have? Well, we don't have any yet. Right. We've got all these really big customers in the UK and in France and Spain, but you'd be our first customer in Germany. When you start having those conversations, then you think this isn't going to work. So it's time to pull back. But I've never given up on any markets. I've pulled back and said, right, let's regroup. Let's get together as a team. So marketing, customer service, sales engineers, and the sales team. Let's brainstorm this. What are we doing wrong? What are other companies doing that are working? What's worked for me, and it was not necessarily, I'd like to say it was by design. I would say it might be less design and more luck, is that partners that I built in the regions that we were doing really well, like France, for example, we had a couple of partners that really resonated, was Silver Bullet and Artifact. And what happened was you build good relationship with them and you build a strong customer base with some really big brands. Then those partners have satellites in the target countries you want to break into. And then that proves to be really useful. because you can lead with the partner in Germany, for example, who says, we've been working with Scott and his team for 2 years. We've got, 4 or 5 major European brands under our belt, and it's great. And we can connect you with the C-suite in those brands if you're considering talking to Scott on the team. So that's where it pulling back and resetting and then going back with a different strategy, is the right way forward, I think.
What are the biggest challenges of leading large multicultural teams across EMEA?
I'm laughing because it just makes me. I remember one specific meeting that I had, very, very big in building culture, and that comes from my Big Mouth Media days, as I said right at the beginning, that we still meet up. We had this amazing culture. So I'm very cultural driven. I like to get the teams together. I remember one meeting that I talk about ad nauseum because it was just hilarious. It was my entire European team, all in different time zones. So I think it's allowing those cultural differences, listening to them, and, allowing them to develop their own flavor of your core culture. I've worked for companies where they're very insistent. They have their core pillars. They're up on the wall in every office. And it feels a little bit prescriptive. You must be like this. These are the core pillars, and this is how we approach things, and this is what you must portray. And I've been successful by allowing those teams, within reason, to express themselves culturally within the regions. The best example I have of it is when I started at Treasure Data. I took over a French team that were already in place, and then we built out Germany, Spain, Portugal, Germany, India, and Scandinavia. So, but they had this core team that were there, and I think they'd been customers, and they'd come across and become a sales team. And we got off to an interesting start because, they were very laissez-faire, to use a French term. They didn't like the playbook. They didn't like doing things the way that the company likes to do. And they didn't like my way of doing things. They didn't want to go through pipeline. They didn't want to do deal analysis, all of that good stuff. And they were coming to me with, can we have this amount of thousands of euros to take this person to the tennis? We want to do a speedboat trip with this customer to this restaurant. And I was like, this is ridiculous. But what actually happened, and what was really interesting, was once I built trust with them and I understood that these guys were really on it and, all they cared about was winning deals, was I actually allowed them to do some of these things and gave them some budget to play with. And boy, did they bring in business. I mean, they were my most successful team. And if they're watching this, Fred and Benjamin, Simone and Charles, I miss you guys so much. They were brilliant.
Oh,
They absolutely smashed it. So it was a real lesson in, they want to build relationships. They're much higher up in the organizations than the UK team who were, selling a user and user manager level. This team were selling to C-suite. They would, Benjamin would not engage anyone if he couldn't have access to C-suite. So it was a real, almost masterclass in how to do things in France. So bit of a rambly story, but
no, it's cool. This is what this is all about. Yeah.
Yeah.
Next question I had was, how do you keep alignment between sales, marketing, and customer success at scale?
This is the big one, isn't it? I was talking to somebody yesterday about this. It's such a tough one. It really is. And I think the straight answer is to have a single metric and get everybody rallied around that single metric is the straight answer. We've all worked in sales organizations where everybody works in silos. So I won't name the company, but one of the companies I've worked in, marketing was very secretive. It was very, we're the experts. We don't need sales input. We're doing stuff globally and we'll do our own flavor of our annual kind of conference for customers. It'll be the same format in each territory. We'll have our, customer advisory board, and they'll be done within the same way in each country and so on. So marketing working in isolation. And then of course coming out and saying, hey, we produced 3,000 leads from this event, or we've smashed all our numbers and all the targets. So I've had this multiple companies. Marketing, we've done our job. We were tasked with bringing in 1,000 leads. We brought in 2,000. Job done. Thank you very much. Sales then say, my sales team is saying, Scott, these leads they're not really leads, or, they're just people who attended and said hi at a booth. They're not really helping us build top of funnel. So most of it's falling out. And then customer service team saying, we didn't know that marketing had offered or said this to customer. We didn't know that your AE had told the customer this. So very much a disjoin across it. So the simple way I try and deal with it is weekly meeting with the heads of those teams and bring members of those teams in as well, if necessary, to talk about specific deals and where they've gone right or wrong, and just have a single metric and get everybody bought into the fact that actually all that matters is the bottom of the funnel. You can chuck as much stuff in the top as you want. If it doesn't distill and drip out the bottom, then it's not job done. And I think moving away from those departmental metrics and looking at one big number is, are we hitting our quota for the region? Yes or no? And if not, what can everybody do to contribute, and go at it that way? You're never going to crack that, because, sales and marketing and customer service are naturally, there's a natural sort of tectonic plate between each department that's always going to be there.
Yeah.
But I think open, honest conversation, which, I don't struggle with as a street talking northern.
Yeah. Okay. What's the best recruitment decision you've ever made in your career, and why?
There's been so many good ones and so many misfires. I think one of the ones that springs to mind immediately is, I decided, look, sales is all about, modern selling certainly is all about understanding individuals. What's the pain that we're trying to solve for? What isn't working in the business? How is that affecting your team, the business, and you personally? And looking at how, from our solution, what parts of that solution will help solve that problem for you. It's this simple equation of identifying that. It's classic med pick, identifying the pain, dig down into that and then solve for the problem. And a lot of salespeople are excellent at presenting services and products and, solutions, but they're not so good at digging into that. So I hired a lady who was a rep from an agency. So she had no SaaS experience, really. She'd been on the agency side of running campaigns that use SaaS, but she hadn't sold SaaS, but she was a very talented agency seller. It took her a little while to get up to speed, but she outperformed everyone else in the team. It was a really, really good decision. She was really able to understand marketers, and she got to the real story much easier than the seller that was, I just want to sell software to you. She was much more about the partnership, the relationship, and was very, very successful. So that was a good choice. And then quickly, just to chuck in the mix, the other ones I'm really, really proud about is where I've taken flyers on SDRs at the sort of beginning of the sales career, just a few individuals that there was something about them, and something about their CV, they were captain of the rugby team or just something about them. And there's been a few over the years that I've really taken a punt on, and I've stuck my neck out when other people have said no. And they've gone on to be very successful SDRs, but very quickly moved through the ranks. And some of them are now running their own sales teams. And I think when you see that on LinkedIn, that makes me smile. And I think, I knew you had it in you, and you've proved me wrong. So, yeah.
Yeah, you just see something slightly different, don't you? That maybe other people haven't in the past. Okay, final question. What role does culture play in driving revenue growth in EMEA?
Culture's everything for me. I said right at the beginning that I'd mentioned about Big Mouth Media at some point. Steve, who was the CEO, now retired from that business, was a CEO. He said to me right at the beginning, he said, you as a manager, do not generate the revenue. You generate the culture and the team that generate the revenue. There was something about that company, right from the top down to the bottom. Everybody lived and breathed what we were doing. Everybody believed in it. Everybody shared in the successes and the failures. Everybody was rewarded either financially or, more importantly, with kudos within the company. And there was a deep respect for everybody within the organization. And that came from the top down, and we all, enhanced it as we passed it down the organization. I joined, I think I was employee 10 or 11, something like that. And there were hundreds and hundreds of us when we sold the business to LBI, which was then was acquired by Digitas. And that culture still resonates today. And I see a lot of those colleagues are now running their own businesses. We're all still in contact. And it made the difference. We were selling the same stuff that Greenlight and everyone else was selling, search engine optimization, running your search engine marketing campaigns, advising on social media, producing content. We weren't doing anything differently, but we were, because we were selling in a different way. And lots of customers, some of the really big wins we had, like I remember British Airways was a massive win for us. It was a huge coup. And, and we had them in there whenever their office was full in Edinburgh. We used to let them use our boardroom. And I just remember a conversation with them, and they just said, this company's amazing. He said, as soon as you walk through the door, you can feel there's an electricity about this place. And he said, every touch point we've had with anyone in your organization has been really positive and professional. So I think that was the exception. I haven't found anything close to that yet, but that's what I'm always aiming for. That's nirvana for me, because that company, we accelerated to become the largest agency in Europe, and then, sold for, hundreds of millions, and the owners retired, and it was a very, very much a success story. So I think culture is really important. I spend a lot of time on it. I'm very much a people person. And I think we're all working hard and we're all cogs in the machine, but I think we have to remember that the team are human, and sometimes you need to check in with them, and you need to have an environment where people can put their hands up. And we've all worked in environments where you can't. I think people need to be able to put their hand up and say, I think we could do this better, or, I'm not happy about something. So that's how I tend to run my teams. And, normally it's a happy place. So yeah, that's my view on it.
Yeah, great. Okay. Cool. Thank you very much, Scott. That was awesome. They've got some quick fire questions just to finish up.
Cool.
So not too much thought around this, but we ask everybody the same similar set of questions at least. So favorite piece of tech or app you're using now?
What, work related or just in general?
Just in general, yeah.
I got stopped for speeding a little while ago. I was doing about 35 and a 30 at 12 o'clock at night. My wife's bought me a thing called Oh No, and it plugs in on the dashboard, and it goes off like old Star Trek. Whenever they went to red alert, it plays that through my stereo really loud when there's a speed camera coming up. It's you if you see one and it doesn't go off, you press a button and it remembers it and tells everyone else. I absolutely love it. Not because it's stopping me getting done for speeding. I just love the Star Trek siren that goes off.
Okay. What if anything keeps you up at night apart from?
Oh, I mean, the main thing is big deals. Those must-win deals that are absolutely massive, and you think we've got this, but have we? And it's like, have we missed anything? Have we spoken to everybody? Is there anything else we can do? It drives me mad. And my wife always knows. She always says, "You've got a big deal, haven't you?" I said, "Yeah." And it's actually mad, but you have to keep revisiting it, and making sure that you've done all the things, because those deals are massive. Not just the revenue that they generate, but the extra customers that they bring in as a result of having that as a logo. So those are the things that I really worry about.
Yeah. Night at the disco, night at the restaurant.
Oh, it very much used to be night at the disco, but now it's very much night at the restaurant. Very much so. I'm a real
Favorite food?
Favorite food has to be Thai. I mean, the only way to answer it is if you could only eat one type of food for the rest of your life, what would it be? And for me, it's Thai, all day long. Love it.
Yeah. Favorite movie?
That's a really tough one. We asked that at Scouts a couple of weeks ago. I'm a real sucker for Braveheart and also Gladiator. I love those films, and also Aliens as well. And they're all equally good. I've watched them multiple times. So I'd go Aliens, Gladiator, and Braveheart if I'm allowed to have 3.
If you were to describe yourself in 2 words, what would it be and why?
I think in work, doggedly determined. And I think just because, I'm a dog with a bone, and, I don't like losing. And I think in my personal life, probably adrenaline junkie. I ride a Ducati Panigale and like going very fast on it. So yeah.
Yeah. Okay. What's your proudest moment in your career to date?
Do you know what? I think standing on the podium at Adobe at the end of the year, facing 4,500, 5,000 AEs, and being one of 200 that were going to President's Club, just having a glass of champagne and being clapped by your peers. I think that was a great moment. That was
I bet.
That was big.
Yeah, I bet. Okay, that brings us to a close then. So thanks very much for sharing all of that. It was really, really good insight. If anybody wants to sort of get in touch with you, learn a bit more, what's the best way to do that?
Just hit me up on LinkedIn.
On LinkedIn, yeah?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
perfect.
Definitely. Love to hear from people if they've got a different perspective, or they want to chat more about any aspect of it. As I say, we're always learning, aren't we?
Yeah. No, perfect.
Yeah.
I loved it. Thanks, Scott. Thanks for taking the time.
It's a pleasure. Thank you, Simon.
Thank you.
Bye.